This is Atomic Biscuits, and I'm your host, BACFA. Welcome into another Atomic Biscuits, everyone. It's episode 2025-0713, Missing Time. Some weeks it's difficult to come up with what topic, but this time it's not difficult. We have a topic that really needs plumbing out. We'll start over at Newsweek.com, not exactly a conservative outlet. Pam Bondi reacts to missing minute in Jeffrey Epstein video. I'll leave the links to this and all of the stories that I cover on Atomic Biscuits on my account at Gab. You can find me at BACFA. That stands for Bread and Circuses for America. Attorney General Pam Bondi responded to a question about the alleged missing minute in video footage released by the Department of Justice meant to prove Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide. At a White House cabinet meeting, Bondi explained the apparent gap in the video, saying it was the result of an outdated recording system that resets nightly. Quote, what we learned from the Bureau of Prisons, every night they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. Every night the video is reset. Every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well as showing that a minute is missing every night. That's it on Epstein, Bondi said. Now, I'm old enough to remember when they said there was no video. I don't know about you. And that somehow a chef who died a little bit beforehand, his body was swapped in because, Epstein wasn't really dead. He was just swapped out because he's, we'll get to that, right? The long-anticipated memo released Monday by the Department of Justice concluded that Epstein died by suicide in his Manhattan cell in 2019, echoing earlier findings by federal and city investigators. The memo also rejected the existence of a so-called client list of influential figures and found no evidence of blackmail. This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list, the DOJ wrote in the memo. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties, the DOJ said. Bondi has faced criticism from both President Donald Trump's allies and opponents over her handling of the investigation. The belief that Epstein kept a client list implicating powerful figures has become widely accepted in some circles. Key Republican lawmakers have treated it as fact and demanded its release. Much of that belief stemmed from Bondi herself. In a February appearance on Fox News, she was asked whether the Department of Justice would release a list of Epstein's clients. It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive from President Trump. I'm reviewing that, she said. When asked later about the interview, Bondi called it a misunderstanding. In February, I did an interview on Fox that got a lot of attention because I was asked about the client list. My response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed. What I meant was the file, along with the JFK and MLK files. That's what I was referring to, she said. At the cabinet meeting, with Trump sitting next to her, he lashed out at a reporter who asked about Epstein, criticizing the question before Bondi could respond. Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this when we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, Trump said. The president's response appeared to signal his continued support for Bondi, even as she faces questions following the Department of Justice memo. The memo noted that while over 1,000 victims were identified in Epstein's crimes, the review uncovered no evidence implicating uncharged third parties or proving that prominent figures were blackmailed. Despite the DOJ's findings, skepticism persists among some of Trump's supporters and critics. Far-right activist Laura Loomer criticized Bondi on social media, saying if she doesn't get fired over the Epstein memo, people are going to be so blackballed, suggesting the administration was hiding the truth. Former Department of Government Efficiency leader Elon Musk also weighed in, posting on X, formerly Twitter, "What's the time? Oh, look, it's no one has been arrested o'clock again," expressing frustration at the lack of prosecutions. In June, amid a public feud with Trump over domestic policy, Musk claimed without evidence that the president's name appeared in the unreleased Epstein files, alleging this was the reason for their non-disclosure. What people are saying. Conservative activist Robbie Starbuck on X. Pam Bondi said the Epstein client list was on her desk for review for release to the public just a few months ago. Now the DOJ she leads claims that there's no Epstein client list. Sorry, but this is unacceptable. Was she lying then, or is she lying now? We deserve answers. Miami Herald journalist Julie K. Brown, one of the best-sourced reporters on the Epstein case, reported earlier this year, those who have worked with the FBI on the case for decades say there is no evidence Epstein kept a ledger or a list of clients who were involved with his sex trafficking operation. President Donald Trump, commenting on Elon Musk's claim, told NBC News in June, "That's called old news. That's been old news. That's been talked about for years. Even Epstein's lawyer said I had nothing to do with it. It's old news." The memo said that no further disclosure of records related to Epstein would be appropriate or warranted. Well, you can imagine many on the right and many on social media just about lost their crap because this is widely known. There's evidence everywhere. There's video. There's photographic evidence. There's testimony. The Miami Herald themselves built the case for Central Florida to go after Epstein, where they locked him up and built him his own jail cell. There have been documentaries made. They've been widely publicized on Netflix. We've got a dead body on our hands that's maybe 6 weeks old in Australia. So it sounds like some twisting is happening. But before we get too far down the road and have our angst all bent out of shape, I'd like to suggest that some people may have it right. How do you get the left to report on something they wouldn't? Well, sometimes it takes bait on the hook, and this is something that the Trump administration has done quite well, even goading us on the right into action in ways that might be a little louder than we might otherwise say. And I'm sure by now you've heard Alex Jones and all the pundits weighing in on this story. But I want to get a snapshot of just how far and wide this reporting got, how deep it got, and how maybe that works to our advantage. Again, this is Newsweek. I'm just going to scroll down here on the right-hand side on their trending. Let me tell you, this is the kind of stuff that's hard-hitting. McDonald's announces breakfast menu change. That's their number one trending story. You know what's happening? They're putting some spicy sauce on an Egg McMuffin. That's the story that's leading the pack over there. We'll scroll on down here a little bit more. I wanted to show you this. Who is contributing? Right about here. Bill Kristol. Yeah. So this is Neocon Central. This is the center of the Democrat Party. And the people who have just fled from any party, they get their information from Newsweek. It's like Time Magazine and others. It claims to be center of the road, fact-based. And if you want to get to this article here and then look at this little link here, this is very fascinating. This T, Newsweek is a Trust Project member. Finding out who is behind Newsweek and what their guidelines are for their editorial work is important, and also who does the editing and who decides what is appropriate to publish. Now, I think this article is pretty center of the road. It goes a little bit at the right, but considering the mood of this past week's stories, I think that's probably pretty fair. But that's unusual for Newsweek, because they too are baiting a hook of their own. Let's look and see what else we can see here. So here's the same story told from a different angle. I would say, very far to the right. Zero Hedge put, they were child porn. They will never be released. Trump and Bondi punt on Epstein questions. Now that's the headline that Tyler Durden put on it. I'll try not to repeat too much here. President Donald Trump and AG, that's Attorney General Pam Bondi, completely punted over a question over Jeffrey Epstein during Tuesday's televised cabinet meeting. They list the question. Reporter, your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. I guess one is whether he ever worked for an American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said he did work for an intelligence agency. So can you resolve whether he did or not? So that's the question that prompted Trump to respond, are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? So notice that by eliminating the question, the other reporting doesn't cross into some territory that maybe they don't want to talk about. There's some video here. It's posted to X. Zero Hedge responds from their X account, Trump, I can't believe you're asking me a question about Epstein. Michael Flynn Jr. responds, I can believe it. Then Pam Bondi jumped in saying, first, to back up on that, in February I did an interview on Fox. It's just like what we talked about before. But it goes on. And my response is, it's still sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning that file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never gonna be released. Never gonna see the light of day. To him, being an agent, I have no knowledge of that. We can get back to you on that. So Zero Hedge asks, so children, being violated by whom? Was there someone else in those tapes besides children? Pam Bondi on the Epstein tapes, they were child porn. They'll never see the light of day. And when can we expect phase 2? Washington Observer, Liam Cosgrove of Zero Hedge makes his White House debut, asks about the Clinton body count and whether phase 2 of the Epstein files will include info about Israel. You've released phase 1 of the Epstein files. What was missing was any connection to his ties. And we know what we're talking about here before we get too far out of guidelines that we can put over the airwaves. Of course, Elon Musk jumped into the fray. How can people be expected to have faith in Trump if he won't release the Epstein files? Musk asks. Community Notes and Violations account responds, will exposing the Epstein files rank high on the America Parties list? Musk responds with a 100% emoji. It's as if a magician accidentally sawed his assistant in half for real, blood spilling everywhere as she bleeds out, and then you hear, it's all part of the show, folks. There's more here. Postings on X. How many videos was he in? Trump looks bad here. Very bad. Ruby Tubi says. I literally feel sick right now after waiting for years for the truth about Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation to come out, and after months of being promised that stunning new information would be released soon, now we're being told to forget the entire thing. The people that were brought in to run the Justice Department and the FBI were supposed to restore faith in the system, but instead they're destroying it. Nobody that can think rationally is buying the lies that we're being fed. Apparently, we're supposed to believe that Jeffrey Epstein didn't have a client list, he never blackmailed anyone, and he was solely responsible for his own death. A Justice Department and FBI review of the investigation related to disgraced late financier Jeffrey Epstein found that there was no client list or evidence that he blackmailed prominent figures, according to a memo detailing the findings. The review also concluded that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide while in custody at a Manhattan correctional facility in August of 2019. Epstein was facing federal sex trafficking charges, and his death was subsequently investigated by the Justice Department's internal watchdog and the FBI. Sex trafficking whom? For whom? The Justice Department and the FBI said in their memo that video footage reviewed by the Bureau investigators and made available to the public confirmed that Epstein was locked in his cell and nobody entered tiers of the unit where he was housed at the time of his death. The Justice Department and the FBI are now facing an unprecedented credibility problem because millions of us simply do not believe them. After everything that's happened, the American people deserve some answers. The following are 12 important questions that all Americans should be asking about the shameful attempt to cover up the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. Number 1. Why were Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell arrested and charged with operating an enormous sex trafficking ring that supposedly involved thousands of clients if no such clients ever existed? As Robbie Starbuck has pointed out, apparently we're supposed to believe that all of the powerful men that visited Epstein's island were just there to catch some waves and relax. Number 2. Why did U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi tell Fox News in February that Epstein's client list was sitting on my desk right now to review if no such client list ever existed? U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi on Friday said the Jeffrey Epstein client list is sitting on my desk right now, and she's reviewing the JFK and MLK files as well after President Donald Trump's earlier directives. It's sitting on my desk right now to review, Bondi told America Report's host John Roberts on Friday. That's been a directive by President Trump. Number 3, what was in the thousands of documents related to the Epstein case that were suddenly discovered in February? Attorney General Pam Bondi has been made aware of thousands of documents related to the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein that were previously not disclosed to her office, she said in a letter on Thursday. Number 4, when Bondi claimed that Epstein flight logs would make you sick in March, what did she mean by that? Attorney General Pam Bondi released hundreds of pages of information connected to Epstein in March, promising it would disclose a lot of names and flight logs that would make you sick. Of course, we'd already seen all this. Long time ago. Number 5, in May, Bondi confessed there were tens of thousands of videos related to the Epstein investigation. What was in those videos? She said in May that the FBI was reviewing tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. Bondi's comments and the delay in releasing the next batch of documents have tapped into suspicions that damaging details about Epstein or other prominent figures remain hidden. You think? So, I'll just pause here for a second. So if these prominent figures are in the videos with underage children, don't we need to know that? Number 6, other than Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, why hasn't anyone else that was involved in the sex trafficking operation ever been arrested? Number 7, the memo that was released on Sunday night says there will be no further disclosure in this case. Does this mean that the Trump administration's search for the truth ends here? And I gotta say, it's like when you're having an argument and you tell the other person, just be quiet. Does that make the argument stop? When someone says, I'm not talking about this anymore, does that make the talking stop? Usually it does not. The reference here for number 7. In a memo published by Axios Sunday night, the DOJ and FBI jointly stated that the Epstein files did not include a client list. I don't know what the flight logs are, or evidence of additional perpetrators, and that there will be no further disclosure of information on the case. This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list, the memo said. There was no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So, there's a lot of wiggle room here. Are there those who have been charged? Are there those who made deals to not get charged? And we're talking about the attorney involved. Are there people who have been charged, but because they are part of an international spy network or influence peddling, that has to remain sealed? So if sealed, who sealed it, and why, and for how long? 25 years? I'm sorry. We see Bill Clinton floating in the water. We see these people going back and forth. It's called the Lolita Express. Number 8. The memo also states that there is no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. Does this mean that none of the men that were having sex with underage girls will ever be brought to justice. Investigators found no incriminating client list of Epstein's, no credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals, and no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties, the memo adds. But here's the thing. If he's an agent, then he might have not been doing the blackmailing directly. Glenn might have been doing the blackmailing, and it could have been done subtly. Hey, remember that last visit we need you to vote this way. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be an exchange of money. It can be influence peddling. And of course, and I hate to even bring this up, but Netanyahu just put in a letter for Trump to get a medal for peace, but then we're going to ship more weapons, offensive, of course, to Ukraine. There's some tangles here. Number 9, on the night that Epstein died, why were there so many strange coincidences? The jail had been told Epstein should have a cellmate and that a guard must check in on him for every 30 minutes. But on the night he died, his cellmate was transferred and not replaced, and he was not checked on as often as required. 2 guards fell asleep at their desks and later falsified their records. Meanwhile, 2 cameras in front of Epstein's cell malfunctioned that night, while another's footage was unusable. Defies mathematics. Number 10, hours of video footage from outside Epstein's cell on the night he died has been released. Do they think that we wouldn't notice that a full minute has been cut out of the video footage? But now we can confirm that an entire minute was cut from the DOJ video that was released last night. Why? What are they hiding? If you follow the full video, you can see for yourself that the video is cut off at 11:59. The video feed then restarts at exactly 12. Where's the missing video? During the time that Elon Musk had unprecedented access, a minute is plenty of time to get somebody in and out, to do the dirty deed. This is like Swiss cheese, this case. And maybe that's by design. I want to believe that that's the case here, that this is all cheese on the baited hook to drag the LIVEstream media into the fray. Number 11, during the time that Elon Musk had unprecedented access to the government's computer systems, did he learn some startling truths about the Epstein investigation? If so, will he reveal what he knows now that he has started his own political party? Number 12. Why was this memo about Epstein case released to the public late on Sunday night on the 4th of July weekend? Were they hoping that it would make as little news as possible? I'm so upset. The victims of Epstein's sex trafficking operation are never going to get any justice, and all of the very sick men that committed unspeakable crimes are never going to be held accountable. A line has been crossed that will never be able to be uncrossed. How are we supposed to have faith in our federal law enforcement agencies after this? They're lying to our faces, and they are convinced that they're totally getting away with it. There are some moments in history that are so horrifying that they will never be forgotten. This is one of those moments. Okay, so that's Michael Schneider over at Zero Hedge that's getting picked up on. And I sort of agree with his take. I can see his anger. I think it's necessary in order to build and stoke. Well, it's very specifically the federal government here. The federal case. That's also underscored over time and again. The FBI's case. Attorney General Pam Bondi, U.S. Attorney General. So, as you can recall, I know most of you are familiar with this case, this was built by the Florida Department of Justice, and that they built their case and they incarcerated his ass. And it was the federal folks that came along and said, yeah, we're going to take over here, after they had gotten some people to admit what was going on. They had some some subpoena requests that were fulfilled. They had some evidence. They had a case that was being built. They had him on several underage things. They had testimony from the woman who is no longer with us. And many have come forward since to describe his operation. And we know that Glenn, who lives still and is in custody still, has all this information in her head, if not in books. So, will they let her go if there's nothing to prosecute? And if so, where will she go? What will she do? Who will she talk to? It's a method, but I kind of feel like maybe we'll hear from DeSantis. Maybe we'll hear from Florida itself. Maybe their case and its details need to come to light. I would encourage you to go and find the Miami Herald story. It is exhaustive. It is one of the best written pieces you can imagine. In fact, I'll find it and I'll post the link over on Gab. Oh, and before we go too far, I'm going to jump back to the Newsweek article. I meant to cover this before I left it behind. There's a read more section on that article, and it has some of the reactions. Marjorie Taylor Greene raises new Epstein question over Little Black Book. White House asked about Pam Bondi having Jeffrey Epstein client list. Elon Musk reacts to Epstein list report. Final straw. So they're definitely getting some clickbait out of this and covering different elements of the story. Now, over at redstate.com, Nick Arama has this story. Anna Paulina Luna responds to Trump Bondi comments on Epstein files, demands more info. Now, this is the very same woman who posted on her Twitter X account what angels really look like with an illustration. Let me tell you, she's not afraid to post just about anything. We reported earlier on the comments made by President Donald Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi regarding the Epstein files, and it's the link to the same old stuff. Bondi said she was referring to the list, she was referring to the files, videos were child porn, yada, yada, yada. It sounded like Trump was upset given he was focused on the Texas flooding disaster and other important issues, but this is an issue that people also want answers on, particularly when they were promised the files would be released. Now, Representative Anna Paulina Luna, a Republican from Florida, is calling for the release of what they have that isn't child porn. She's in charge of the committee dealing with secrets like this, such as the MLK files and the JFK files. She posted on X, "The American people deserve to know the truth," referring to Epstein, regardless of who it impacts. There is plenty of evidence and info not pertaining to CSAM victims that DOJ leadership can authorize the FBI Director Cash and FBI Director Bongino to release. The FBI cannot release anything without, and there's more. The people should be free to come to their own conclusions. The truth will always come out one way or another. The task force and all of its members will be asking for that on behalf of the American people. Trump ordered the release of the files. However, so far the only things released by the Department of Justice have been already available, such as the flight logs, which don't necessarily indicate guilt of anything. What I think they need to do at this point is to have Bondi give a special briefing devoted solely to this issue and respond specifically to all the questions about what they do have. No one wants child porn released, but there has to be a variety of evidence that pertains to bad actors. That's what people want the answers about. That's what they want to know is being pursued in federal actions. Now, if they were pursuing actions, they might not be able to release some things. Now, that's ongoing investigations stuff. But they would need to state that, unless they don't want the person who's being investigated to know that they're being investigated. But why do a public statement if that's the case? They set the timing to July 4th. However, they should release anything they have regarding that central concern. That's the story over at Red State.
Listen, that Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this. Catherine Rumler, we need to keep the heat on this case, folks. There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there that Epstein may have had video and audio of people out there doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And you should be asking yourself the question, how is it that all these people, the CIA director, the Obama fixer, Bill Clinton, all intersected paths with Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein isn't with us anymore, and nobody seems to want to talk about it. Outside of a few entrepreneurial media outlets saying, hey, this is a big deal.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Is for the way women think.
The way women think.
That's correct.
Is that not a sop because of all the depravity you've done against young women? And your new sop is that their women's thinking is the future?
No, I've always believed that women would in fact be able to take over. I'm a firm believer and supporter of Time's Up.
Federal prosecutors said yesterday video of Epstein's jail cell when he made his first suicide attempt no longer exists.
By the time I was 16, I brought him up to 75 girls.
You own an island, right?
Thank you very much.
Two islands, the islands of Dr. Moreau?
Correct.
You.
Money never interested me.
Money never interested you?
No. Money to me is only numbers.
How many houses do you have?
I don't know.
You don't know how many houses you have?
The greatest threat to people put in solitary confinement is they try to kill themselves. Imagine that. You're only in a room for 24 hours, you start to go crazy.
I'm not blaming the FBI director, Kash Patel, or the deputy director, Dan Bongino. I think that layer beneath them, that's part of what we like to call the deep state, has taken this bull by the horns, and they've probably destroyed information. Look at what the CIA did in 1975 after Congress ordered that it release all of its files related to an operation called MK-Ultra. The director of the CIA went back to headquarters and ordered everything to be destroyed. And in the end, only about 20% of the documents survived. We're still learning about the FBI's operations against Martin Luther King 55 years after the fact. So now we're supposed to believe that everybody's telling the truth, that there were no files, there were no dossiers? I'm sorry, I just don't buy it because I know how these people operate.
Tucker Carlson warns Trump could spark a revolution with very dangerous Epstein cover-up. This is by Isaac Shore. Former Fox News host Tucker Carlson warned that President Donald Trump and his administration could be inviting a revolution by not delivering on his campaign promise to reveal the truth about Jeffrey Epstein's criminal sex enterprise. Carlson issued the warning during a conversation with Sagar Enjeti about a Trump DOJ memo that concluded Epstein did, in fact, commit suicide and there was no incriminating client list or credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. I'll just pause right there. Do you think that there is timing involved in another high-profile sex trafficking case and this story dropping? I think there's absolutely linkage here. I'm just disappointed that the linkage is what it is at this point in the game. But take a deep breath, wait a week, see what happens. That's been the way it works for a long time. Especially when it comes to these pseudo wars on the right, where it looks like people are fighting when it's all theater. Well, that's why, in a way, I want to hold a lot of these leaders to a higher standard, is because if you are elected on that message and you betray that message, in my opinion, you're more culpable than them. Let's say the idiots like George W. Bush and others who really believed it, right? Mused Enjeti. And you reap what you sow. I mean, you said you're not a radical. I'm similar in disposition. Like, I don't want to see mass violence. But as an analyst, or as somebody familiar with history, somebody who has an audience and can pick up on social trends, people are mad as hell right now. They're angry, he continued. Too mad, suggested Carlson, who argued you're really playing with fire when you insult the population by calling them conspiracy theorists. He continued along these lines moments later, quote, "But how can you say that thousands of children were raped, but I'm not going to find out who raped them? How can you say that?" They said that. By the way, when Pam Bondi went on television and said, "I have a videotape of kids getting abused," I didn't. I followed this case closely, and I know a lot of people involved. As I've told you, I had no idea. I didn't know that. Really? Thousands of children got raped? Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? This is the Department of Justice. This is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just think it's very dangerous to play around with this stuff. Like, very dangerous. I don't want a revolution, but if you wanted a revolution, this is how you would act. The video is linked to on the Tucker Carlson network by Mediaite. Interesting. And it's interesting because of the context that we'll cover a little bit later on as well. Let's look at the top stories over here on the right-hand side of Mediaite. You know about this? Trump whispers to Hegseth during reporter's question. Musk's X has taken action to ban hate speech following AI's pro-Hitler rants. Trump stuns with non-answer on who paused U.S. weapons shipments to Ukraine. Grok has just gone full Hitler. X users react to AI praising Nazi dictator. Elon Musk accuses Steve Bannon of being in Epstein files in post to Roger Stone. And that's an interesting exchange. I think a lot of this is, again, theater. Notice this is all covered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The top 5 stories at Mediaite are here. So that begs the question, what's not getting covered, right? In the most popular section, Alex Jones breaks down in tears while condemning Trump over the Epstein cover-up. Got some video about that. Trump gives head-scratching reply when asked about 90 trade deals he promised. See, this is not pro-Trump. Trump nearly speechless after Netanyahu gives him Peace Prize letter. Pam Bondi's claim she found a truckload of Jeffrey Epstein evidence goes viral. Texas pediatrician put on leave after viral flood rant. Get what they voted for. So there you go. There's not much here but Trump, Musk, X, and Epstein reactions. So they've definitely hooked the media. Okay, let's move on, and we'll come back to this later in the show. Now, other things were going on in the universe, believe it or not. In addition to celebrating the country's 249th birthday for Independence Day, there were some tariff news and some other things that went into effect. Trump sets 25% tariffs on Japan and South Korea and new import taxes on 12 other nations. Copper was at the focus of a lot of this, which was interesting to me. This source is apnews.com. Again, not a conservative outlet by any means. This is by Josh Boak. President Donald Trump on Monday set a 25% tax on goods imported from Japan and South Korea, as well as new tariff rates on a dozen other nations that would go into effect on August 1st. Trump provided notice by posting letters on Truth Social that were addressed to leaders of the various countries. The letters warned them to not retaliate by increasing their own import taxes, or else the Trump administration would further increase tariffs. If for any reason you decide to raise your tariffs, then whatever the number you choose to raise them by will be added on to the 25% that we charge, Trump wrote in the letters to Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. Now, just to pause for a second, this has created what some outlets call jingoism. Oh dear, there's a word we haven't heard in a long time. But truly, having each country be self-sufficient and then sell its excess makes a lot more sense than having everyone interdependent on everyone else and causing disruption. The letters were not the final word from Trump on tariffs, as much as another episode in a global economic drama in which he has placed himself at the center. His moves have raised fears that economic growth would slow to a trickle, if not, make the U.S. and other nations more vulnerable to a recession. But Trump is confident that tariffs are necessary to bring back domestic manufacturing and fund the tax cuts he signed into law last Friday. He mixed his sense of aggression with a willingness to still negotiate, signaling the likelihood that the drama and uncertainty would continue and that few things are ever final with Trump. It's all done. Trump told reporters Monday, "I told you we'll make some deals, but for the most part, we're going to send a letter." South Korea's trade ministry said early Tuesday that it will accelerate negotiations with the United States to achieve a mutually beneficial deal before the 25% tax on its exports goes into effect. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba on Tuesday called Trump's decision extremely regrettable, but Ishiba said the announced tariff rate was lower than what Trump previously had threatened and would make further negotiation possible before the August 1st deadline. Imports from Myanmar and Laos would be taxed at 40%, Cambodia and Thailand at 36%, Serbia and Bangladesh at 35%, Indonesia at 32%, South Africa and Bosnia-Herzegovina at 30%, and Kazakhstan, Malaysia, and Tunisia at 25%. Trump placed the word "only" before revealing the rate in his letters to the foreign leaders, implying that he was being generous with his tariffs, but the letters generally followed a standard format, so much so that one to Bosnia and Herzegovina initially addressed its woman leader as Mr. President. Trump later posted a corrected letter. While White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Trump, by setting the rates himself, was creating tailor-made trade plans for each and every country on this planet, and that's what this administration continues to be focused on. Following a now well-worn pattern, Trump plans to continue sharing the letters sent to his counterparts on social media and then mailing them the documents, a stark departure from the more formal practices of all his predecessors when negotiating trade agreements. The letters not agreed to settlements, but Trump's own choice on rates, a sign that the closed-door talks with foreign delegations failed to produce satisfactory results for either side. Wendy Cutler, vice president of the Asia Society Policy Institute, who formerly worked in the office of U.S. Trade Representative, said the tariff hikes on Japan and South Korea were unfortunate. Both have been close partners on economic security matters and have a lot to offer the United States on priority matters like shipbuilding, semiconductors, critical minerals, and energy cooperation, Cutler said. Trump still has outstanding differences on trade with European Union and India, among other trading partners. Tough talks with China are on a longer time horizon in which imports from that nation are being taxed at 55%. The office of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said the tariff rates announced by Trump mischaracterized the trade relationship with the U.S., but it would continue with its diplomatic efforts towards a more balanced and mutually beneficial trade relationship with the United States, after having proposed a trade framework on May 20th. The S&P 500 stock index was down 0.8% in Monday trading, while the interest charged on 10-year U.S. Treasury notes increased to nearly 4.39%, a figure that could translate into elevated rates for mortgages and auto loans. Trump has declared an economic emergency to unilaterally impose the taxes, suggesting they are remedies for past trade deficits, even though many U.S. consumers have come to value autos, electronics, and other goods from Japan and South Korea. The Constitution grants Congress the power to levy tariffs under normal circumstances, though tariffs can also result from executive branch investigations regarding national security risks. Trump's ability to impose tariffs through an economic emergency is under legal challenge, with the administration appealing a May ruling by the U.S. Court of International Trade that said the president exceeded his authority. It's unclear what he gains strategically against China, another stated reason for the tariffs, by challenging two crucial partners in Asia, Japan and South Korea, that could counter China's economic heft. These tariffs may be modified upward or downward depending on our relationship with your country, Trump wrote in both letters. Because the new tariff rates go into effect in roughly 3 weeks, Trump is setting up a period of possibly tempestuous talks among the U.S. and its trade partners to reach new frameworks. I don't see a huge escalation or a walk back. It's just more of the same, said Scott Lincomb, a vice president at Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank. Trump initially roiled the financial markets by announcing tariff rates on dozens of countries, including 24% on Japan and 25% on South Korea. In order to calm the markets, Trump unveiled a 90-day negotiating period during which goods from most countries were taxed at a baseline 10%. So far, the rates in the letters sent by Trump either matched his April 2nd tariffs or are generally close to them. The 90-day negotiating period technically ends Wednesday, even as multiple administration officials suggested the 3-week period before implementation is akin to overtime for additional talks that could change the rates. Trump signed an executive order Monday to delay the official tariff increases until August 1st. Congressionally approved trade agreements historically have sometimes taken years to negotiate because of the complexity. Administration officials have said Trump is relying on tariff revenues to help offset the tax cuts he signed into law on July 4th, a move that could shift a greater share of the federal tax burden into the middle class and poor, as importers would likely pass along much of the cost of tariffs. Trump has warned major retailers such as Walmart to simply eat the higher costs instead of increasing prices in ways that could intensify inflation. Josh Lipsky, chair of international economics at the Atlantic Council, said a 3-week delay in imposing the tariffs was unlikely sufficient for meaningful talks to take place. I take it as a signal that he is serious about most of these tariffs, and it's not at all a negotiating posture, Lipsky said. Just pause right there. Here's the thing. The reason you would raise these trade barriers is to force retailers like Walmart to source the materials here in the States. That is exactly the purpose of them, not to continue to subsidize slave labor out of China. Trump's team promised 90 deals in 90 days, but his negotiations so far have produced only 2 trade frameworks. His outline of a deal with Vietnam was clearly designed to box out China from routing its America-bound goods through that country by doubling the 20% tariff charged on Vietnamese imports on anything traded transnationally. The quotas in the signed UK framework would spare that nation from the higher tariff rates being charged on steel, aluminum, and autos, though British goods would generally face a 10% tariff. The United States ran a $69.4 billion trade imbalance in goods with Japan in 2024 and a $66 billion imbalance with South Korea, according to the Census Bureau. The trade deficits are the differences between what the U.S. exports to a country relative to what it imports. According to Trump's letters, autos would be tariffed separately at the standard 25% worldwide, while steel and aluminum imports would be taxed on 50%. This is not the first time Trump has tangled with Japan and South Korea on trade, and the new tariffs suggest his past deals made during his first term failed to deliver on his administration's own hype. In 2018, during Trump's first term, his administration celebrated a revamped trade agreement with South Korea as a major win, and in 2019, Trump signed a limited agreement with Japan on agricultural products and digital trade that at the time he called a huge victory for America's farmers, ranchers, and growers. Trump has also said on social media that countries aligned with the policy goals of BRICS, an organization composed of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates, would face additional tariffs of 10%. So there you go. That's your not glowing report about on the trade deals. These deficits are a negotiating tactic that can be used in a quick way that Congress could never play because they're too slow. We'll have to see how this pans out and whether or not those gotchas against South Korea and Japan stick. I feel like this is part of the negotiating strategy of chess with China to make it seem as if they're on the outs as well. I have a feeling that we'll be coming back to those allies with a little bit of a different deal. Over at the Daily Caller, dailycaller.com, Trump administration moves to block China from grabbing up American farmland. By Audrey Streb. The Trump administration announced the U.S. Department of Agriculture's, that's the USDA, National Farm Security Action Plan to protect American farmland from foreign adversaries on Tuesday. The National Farm Security Action Plan includes legislative and executive actions at the state and federal level to shield farmland from foreign adversaries, strengthen agriculture research, and defend it from intellectual property theft, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said on Tuesday. China's purchased vast amounts of American farmland over the years, amounting to 338,000 acres in 2020, according to the USDA data. American agriculture is not just about feeding our families, but also about protecting our nation and standing up to foreign adversaries who are buying our farmland, stealing our research, and creating dangerous vulnerabilities in the very systems that sustain us, Rollins said. Every family depends on what our farmers do, and that is exactly why American agriculture is under threat. Rollins joined several cabinet members, including Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, Attorney General Pam Bondi, as well as a few members of Congress, to announce the plan at a Washington, D.C. press conference. The USDA and other agencies will block Chinese nationals from purchasing American farmland and end departmental agreements going to people and entities in countries of concern or other foreign adversaries, Rollins told reporters on Monday ahead of the press conference. Too much American land is owned by nationals of adversarial countries, and more than 265,000 acres in the United States are owned by Chinese nationals, much of which is located near American military bases, Rollins told reporters on Monday. Rollins pointed to a graph that illustrated Chinese farmland purchases surrounding American military bases on Tuesday. Notably, the Department of Justice charged 2 Chinese nationals for smuggling a fungus classified as a bioweapon on June 3rd that has the potential to devastate American crops, livestock, and people. China has also stolen billions in intellectual property from the United States, one White House report estimating that China stole between $180 billion and $540 billion in 2018. One Chinese spy was caught stealing corn seeds in Iowa in 2016, a case that continues to put some Iowa farmers on edge. Hegseth and Rollins argued that food security is national security throughout the Tuesday conference. I'll tell you that this is not a national problem, but a local problem as well. People, Americans, looking to make a quick buck, uploading pictures that they've taken of bases to Chinese instructors acting as foreign agents are really playing with fire. And this is going on, it's getting picked up by local news stations all around the country. Okay, over at CBSNews.com, not a conservative outlet. Los Angeles mayor slams outrageous and un-American federal immigration enforcement sweep through MacArthur Park. Now, those folks who are familiar with Los Angeles know that MacArthur Park is notorious, drugged-in, open-air market selling of all kinds of stuff that should not happen and in normal circumstances would not happen, but you've got weirdos and idiots running the show there. A visibly angry Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass on Monday blasted the Trump administration's continued immigration enforcement push throughout the city amid reports of a large-scale operation near downtown. Bass said she was on her way to a news conference with Governor Gavin Newsom in Pasadena when she was alerted to an immigration enforcement operation at MacArthur Park in LA's Westlake district. She directed her driver to turn around and head toward the park, where she demanded that the operation end. To me, this is another example of the administration ratcheting up chaos by deploying what looked like a military operation in an American city, Bass said. You can spin it any way you like, but in my opinion, it's a political agenda of provoking fear and terror. SkyCal first captured visuals of the operation at about 10:45 a.m. as officers on horseback moved from one end of the park to the other. Officers didn't take anyone into custody at the time. Trump has defended the operations by stating that Democrat-run cities like L.A. use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good-paying jobs and benefits from hardworking American citizens. City Council President Marquise Harris Dawson challenged the legitimacy of the operation on Monday afternoon, saying that the scene looked like the staging for a TikTok video. If you want to film in L.A., you should apply for a film permit like everybody else, he said. At around 11:05 a.m., Mayor Karen Bass exited a vehicle and approached CBP officers in an unannounced visit. At one point, a CBP officer handed Bass a cell phone. Frankly, it is outrageous and un-American that we have federal armed vehicles in our parks when nothing is going on in the parks, she said. Bass said that when federal agents arrived, a children's summer camp was taking place at the park. I went and I spoke to an 8-year-old who told me that he was afraid of ICE taking his parents, and he didn't think it was good to take people away, Bass said while slamming the podium with her fist. The Department of Homeland Security declined to comment on the operation. Authorities did not report any arrests. And that's over at cbsnews.com. Over at Breitbart.com, the Department of Homeland Security, San Antonio City Council candidate calls for shooting ICE agents. The Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, reported that a San Antonio City Council candidate called for the shooting of ICE agents on the streets of Los Angeles. The threat by self-described Democrat political consultant comes as ICE agents are increasingly assaulted and a Border Patrol station in Texas came under attack from a gunman. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin posted on social media that San Antonio City Council candidate Matthew Gowana called for the killing of ICE agents in Los Angeles. I want to see a few dead ICE agents. Los Angeles, don't let me down. They copied it and posted it. McLaughlin called the threat depraved. The post by Gowana was subsequently removed, but not before others on X grabbed screenshots of the threat calling for the assassination of ICE agents, and those appear here. Gawana's post appears to be a reply to a Fox News post by Bill Melugin. Gawana appeared to have been angered by the enforcement action in LA's MacArthur Park. During the raid, LA Mayor Karen Bass confronted ICE agents and military personnel, as reported by Breitbart. There's the post here by Charlie Kirk. The post also came on the same day that Ryan Lewis Mosqueda donned tactical gear and attacked a U.S. Border Patrol station in McAllen, Texas. Law enforcement officers and agents quickly responded, neutralizing the attacker. Many on social media quickly called for the arrest and prosecution of Gowana. Texas Attorney General candidate Aaron Reitz also called for Gowana's arrest. McLaughlin seemed to be part of the same mindset. We'll see you soon, she said in her post. Okay, to pivot a little bit. Pieces from one of 7 ancient wonders are raised. Stone blocks that were part of Lighthouse of Alexandria are pulled from the sea. This is by Kate Simmons over at Newser.com. Long-lost stone blocks from the legendary Lighthouse of Alexandria, once a beacon to ancient mariners and one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, have been hoisted from the Mediterranean. The blocks, submerged for centuries in Alexandria's harbor, are being digitally scanned as part of the effort to create a virtual reconstruction of the iconic structure and learn more about its construction and collapse. The details: Live Science reports the lighthouse, built around 280 BC at the behest of Ptolemy II, was a technological marvel. It stood more than 328 feet high, featured a multi-tiered design, and had a beacon that was visible for up to 30 miles. It was destroyed by earthquakes in the 14th century, and its ruins were found in the water in 1994 by French archaeologist Jean-Yves Empereur. The blocks that were just raised were part of the 3rd effort French researchers have conducted at the site since. A June 24th press release from La Fondation des Salt Systèmes described what was raised, per Archaeology magazine. 22 blocks, including massive door lintels and jambs that weigh as much as 80 tons each, along with a previously unknown pylon that features an Egyptian-style door. Art News reports the blocks will join over 100 others that have previously been found and digitized, and the combined data will be used to create a comprehensive virtual model to better understand the lighthouse's original design and structure. One interesting fact from Live Science regarding that beacon: it was likely created through the use of a lighthouse fire and large polished metal surfaces, possibly made of bronze or copper, but those surfaces have not survived and little is known about them.
The federal government is not leaving LA. I don't work for Karen Bass. The federal government doesn't work for Karen Bass. We're going to be here
from the white sand beaches of the Emerald Coast in the free state of Florida on the Gulf of America. This is BACFA.
Thanks for joining us for Atomic Biscuits. Tune in again next week for more news and music. Check out BACFA on Gab at BACFA, as well as Bitchute, Rumble, D-Live and Odysee. Listen to WBN 324 on radio stations around the world, on many streaming platforms, and World Broadcasting Network WBN 324.zil.